Golden State Media Concepts bring you Book Review Podcast, a haven for bookworms of all ages and the widest genres, from mystery to memoirs, romance to comedy, fantasy to sci-fi. If you love to read, this is the podcast for you. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Book Review Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Sarah, and it is a beautiful, sunshiny day here in Northern California. Not that that's that uncommon, but still, little vitamin D never hurt. It's always nice to see the sun, and my dogs love it. They love to go lay on the sidewalk in the backyard and just soak up all of that sun, and then I love it when they come in because then I scoop them up and soak up all of their sun-soakedness. Yes, I just made up that phrase, as usual. I hope you are well. I hope that whatever you're doing today is whatever you want it to be, whether that's productive or relaxing or a combination thereof. I just hope that you are having the day that you would like to have. We are going to have another author interview, which I always love. Today, I am speaking with author Sariah Wilson about not just one, but two romantic comedies, so you know I love that. The books are called Roommade and The Seat Filler, and since Roommade is the one that we will talk about first, I will give you the description of that from the back of the book. Madison Huntington is determined to live her dreams. That means getting out from under her family's wealth and influence by saying no to the family business, her allowance, and her home. But on a teacher's salary, the real world comes as a rude awakening, especially when she wakes up every morning on a colleague's couch. To get a place of her own, without cockroaches, mold, or crime scene tape, Madison accepts a position as a roommate. In exchange for free room and board, all she needs to do is keep her busy roommate's penthouse clean and his dog company. So what if she's never washed a dish in her life? She can figure this out, right? Madison is pretty confident she can fake it well enough that Tyler Roth will never know the difference. The finance whiz is rich and privileged and navigates the same social circles as her parents, but to him she's just a teacher in need of an apartment. He's everything Madison has run from, but his kind-hearted nature, stomach-fluttering smile, and unexpected insecurities only make her want to get closer. And Tyler is warming to the move. Rewarding job, perfect guy, great future. With everything so right, what could go wrong? Madison is about to find out. So that is the description of Roommade by Sariah Wilson. I love even the description of it because it's so very romantic comedy-esque, right? Like you have the somewhat bizarre, not very usual means of getting this couple together. There are their own past insecurities or past experiences that make them think that they're not ever going to, fall in love, or at least fall in love with each other. Of course they're going to then fall in love with each other. It's a romantic comedy, of course. And so I just love to see what ensues as they get to know each other, as they navigate those pasts, trying to figure out, how to define their relationship. Of course, their pasts are going to come up, the secrets that they've been trying to keep, etc. So I just really love romantic comedies, and this one does not disappoint. So with no further ado, let's go ahead and turn to the interview with Sariah Wilson.
This call is being recorded.
Hi, Soraya. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Sarah. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm excited to have you here, although I have to tell you one thing. There's an extra letter in your name. There's an I. Your name is spelled wrong.
I have actually had people tell me that. They're like, you spelled your name wrong. I'm like, I think I know how to spell my name. I'm on top of that one.
I think you would know how to spell your name. It just, it's almost my name, but there's just that little extra I.
I'm kind of changing the whole sound. Yeah, just a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, it adds an extra syllable.
Yeah.
which is very cool. Anyway, we're not here to talk about your name or how it's spelled. We're here to talk about two of your books, The Seat Filler and Roommade. Before we get to the books, though, if you could share a little bit about yourself, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, my name is Sariah Wilson. I live here in Utah. I write romantic comedies. I've been doing that for about 5 years now. I'm a mother of 4 kids. I'm a big, huge pop culture nerd and fangirl, and yeah, I think that's kind of me in a nutshell.
All right. I love that you write romantic comedies because that's pretty much my favorite genre, and I've been reading a lot of other genres for the podcast lately, which is great, but it's nice to have that romantic comedy back in my world for a little while.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. So as I said, we have 2 books that we'll talk about today. The first one we'll talk about is The Seat Filler. That one's already out, correct? Or did I get that mixed up?
It will be out. Yeah, April 27th is when it comes out.
Okay, so Roommate is the one that's already out. Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll start with the one that's already out. That one's called Roommade. So can you give an overview of the story?
Yeah, I've got a girl who grew up a wealthy heiress who has kind of defied her family's wishes and wants to go out on her own and be a teacher of all horrible things in their eyes. And she needs a place to live. And she's realizing, as someone who was raised with a lot of money, that she can't really afford any place. And, it's pretty awful. And she gets offered a chance to become someone's, I call it a roommate, where if she can kind of clean up the apartment a little bit and watch, his dog, she can live in his room rent-free. And of course she wants to take it, and, who wouldn't? And he's gorgeous, but, they can't have a relationship because, past things have happened, and, but that doesn't ever really hold up very well. So yeah, it's about them becoming friends and falling in love, and Madison, the heroine, kind of finding her place in life and how to, operate and function on her own for the first time. And yeah, I think it's fun. I mean, I have fun writing it, so hopefully other people will think it's fun too.
I agree. I think it's fun. I like your sense of humor. You've got some great one-liners throughout both books, and I also like that her aunt in the beginning of the book says, comes up with the word roommate. She's a maid, she's a roommate. She smushes the words together, and then she immediately texts her lawyer to see if she can copyright or trademark that word. I don't know. That just struck me as funny.
I know people like that.
Yeah. Did it ever occur to you? Is that something that ever occurs to you? Because that's not something in my daily life that would ever occur to me to like copyright a word.
No, but I did, and I think the reason, probably because I know people like this, is that I did work when I was first out of college for patent and copyright and trademark IP attorneys. So I know how important that stuff can be, but yeah, people get carried away with that sometimes, I think.
Yeah, I agree. But I do like mush together words, so I'm a fan. What was your initial inspiration for this particular story?
It was a Time magazine article that was from 15 years ago. This apparently was a thing that was kind of starting to happen, where you had young professionals who wanted someone to kind of be watching their home, maybe taking care of their pet, and instead of paying for a housekeeper, or you worry about security and things, people coming in and out, and here's someone that's always there. And so they were, had them move in, and it was kind of, people were upset because, it's kind of falling along gender lines, right? That usually the people with the place were men, and it was women who were choosing to move in. But I remember reading it and thinking, gosh, what a great setup for a romantic comedy, and thinking, how much better would it be, like in my book, where if the heroine can't clean because she doesn't know how to do it, because she never has, and I've gotten some reviews on that book where they're like, it's just ridiculous that she doesn't know how to clean. All the stories in this book are real stories. Like, I contacted my friends and family. Tell me about that girl you lived with in college who didn't know how to clean, because these people exist. This happens, So those were all really and truly real stories.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes you shake your head, but I think if we really thought about it, we all know someone who has things that we know how to do that are just maybe second nature, or just because we grew up that way, that the other people don't, and we think, how did you make it through life without knowing how to do that?
Right. I mean, I remember the first time my mom pulled into a gas station and she's like, jump out and get gas. And I was like, I have no idea how to get gas. Like, I was like 15 years old because they'd never shown me, or another friend of mine said, she goes, yeah, I didn't know how to mail a letter. I thought you just put like a whole bunch of stamps on it, because if someone doesn't tell you, you don't know how to do that stuff. So, yeah.
The first time my mom told me to make my own doctor's appointment, I panicked. I was like, I don't want to. Don't make me use the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about Madison. What about her do you think will resonate with readers?
What I'm hoping is, because a lot of times if you write people who are from a wealthy family, it's very easy to dismiss them, right? Like, oh, you don't know what real life's like. So I'm hoping what people will relate to is that she made this decision to walk away from that and to strike out on her own and to do her best and do a job that she feels very fulfilled by and feels called to do. And that she tries to kind of keep a good sense of humor about her life and the trials that she's going through and find the best way to deal with them, and that she's resilient. And I hope that when you see how awful her family is, because they're pretty bad, that people will feel sympathy for her and feel like, oh, you poor thing, like no wonder. So yeah, I really like Madison. I like all my heroines for different reasons, but I really enjoy her. I just think it's fun. I admire someone who, instead of just saying, well, I don't know how to do that stuff, just goes, okay, let's figure it out. Let's go do it. I'm not sure I'm always like that. So I enjoyed writing her that way.
Let's go ahead and take our first break of the podcast. When we come back, Soraya and I will be talking a little bit more about Madison as the main character of Roommade, how she left her family, trying to break away from that family, what she didn't want to be, and to live her own life. And I always like that as a character trait and as a story, as a plot line. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I will be right back.
Golden State Media Concepts bring you the Bible Study Podcast. Reflect and journey the Bible as together we study God's Word and be inspired. Bible study made fun and informative for all ages. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Bible Study Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast. Today I am speaking with Sariah Wilson. We are currently speaking about her book, Roommade. Before the break, we were talking about Madison as the main character, and we're going to talk a little bit more about her as the main character and her character development of leaving her family, trying to pursue her own life and dreams, etc. So let's go ahead and return it to that interview.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm always interested in both stories and real people who seem to come out of their family, like they do a complete 180. Their family is this, and they are pretty much the opposite. And I'm always fascinated how that happens, what instills that in them, that they kind of are able to recognize what might be a little wrong with their family and kind of turn away from it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then can you talk about the relationship? Obviously, it starts out with the roommate situation between Madison and why am I blanking on the name? Tyler. Can you talk a little bit about their relationship and just, I mean, obviously I don't want you to give a lot away, but kind of how it evolves.
Oh, what can we talk about with them? I think they were fun. I think the problem in writing these romantic comedies, especially the way that I write, because I write them sweet, that puts a whole other layer of difficulty into writing a romance. Because, in romances that are steamier, you can introduce physical intimacy much sooner, because they'll say, oh, it doesn't mean anything, even though it does, right? So I thought, but when you're writing sweet, you can't do that. Like every kiss means something, and they can't just be randomly kissing each other. But I really enjoyed writing them because I think they're I think they play off each other well, and kind of why do we keep them apart? So for him, he had a roommate who kind of got stalkery, and so he doesn't want to be in a relationship with someone hoping, that being the end result. And so that puts a big barrier between them. And then, so because of that, her aunt tells him that she has a long-term boyfriend, which is kind of true. I mean, she'd had this boyfriend that her family picked out for her like most of her life. But he's a terrible person, and she wants to be done with him and keeps trying to break up with him, and he keeps coming back. But she goes along with it because she's so desperate for a place to live. So Tyler thinks Madison's got a boyfriend. Madison thinks, Tyler wants something to do with you. So it was fun to be able to build them up with a friendship where they just enjoy hanging out together and just really like each other as people. And there's very much a physical element to that, and always has been, but they're both kind of suppressing it for different reasons. And getting to play off that, I think, was really fun.
Yeah, I like how your characters have they have story. I mean, we all have stories, and there's the stories that you tell people kind of right up front, and then those stories that you are either embarrassed about or unsure about, or you're worried someone will judge you for, and so they keep those back, and that has to come out throughout the books.
And
let's switch our attention to the seat filler. This is, very different in a story-wise. So can you give an overview of this one?
Yeah, this is like, I had such a blast writing this book. It's about a girl who volunteers as a seat filler at like a big award show for Hollywood, and gets seated next to her favorite actor, and can't speak, but he's kind of interested in her and makes a move to get to know her better. But she completely blows him off because she, one, doesn't believe that he could actually be interested in her, and two, she doesn't date. And the reason she doesn't date is because she has this severe phobia of kissing. And he kind of pursues her as a friend and, wants to spend time with her. And she finally confesses this deep, dark secret to him. And he's like, well, I could help you with that. We could practice kissing. And so that's where the book kind of takes off from.
I love, it was fun to read about seat fillers because I know they exist at awards shows, but I'd never really thought about the logistics so much. And so that was fun. But then their meet cute is great, and I don't want to give much away because it's hilarious. But I just feel like it's something that would happen to me, and I would end up in the same literal position that Juliet was in. What was your inspiration for this book?
Okay, this may be a long story. I will try to keep it short. So I last year got to go to the SAG Awards. They have these bleachers on the red carpet for fans, and Adam Driver was doing an event for his charity. It was an auction, and I won. So my daughter and I got to go, and I mean, we were meeting celebrities left and right, like childhood idols. Helena Bonham Carter comes over and signs an autograph, asks how to spell my name, Carrie Elwes, and I'm thinking, as you wish, the whole time he's standing there. Henry Winkler. Yeah. Henry Winkler. Yeah, for me, like as a baby, I used to watch that show. My mom said before I could even talk, I would sit on the floor and put both my thumbs up and go, "A." So he came over, signed autographs, told my daughter she was beautiful, and I was great. Yeah, I was starstruck, but I was talking to everybody. Good luck tonight. So nice to meet you. I was fine, right? So I know Adam Driver's going to come over, and I've read that he has like social anxiety and doesn't like red carpets, and so I knew I would have to carry the conversation. He walked over, and my brain turned off. That is the only way I can think of to describe it. He is such a large, imposing person that it was like, oh my gosh, I could not talk. And so I made this poor man carry the conversation. Like he had to ask me where I was from twice because I'm telling you, I could not speak. And I mean, he sent autographs for us. He took pictures with us. It was such a nice person, just so wonderful. I mean, the whole thing was like a minute and a half long. My daughter, who's 12, she videotapes it because, kids videotape everything. And she filmed the whole thing, and he walked away, and I said, this is a book. Like a girl meeting her favorite celebrity and not able to speak. This is a book. And so, I took it from there, and I would say Noah is inspired by Adam because some things that I find fascinating about Adam Driver is things like how he's this actor who's sensitive and artistic, but he was also in the Marines, So I took some stuff from him because I thought, I have no idea what he'd like, Like I said, we talked for a minute and a half and he asked where I was from. That was the conversation. But yeah, I thought it would be really fun to kind of do something similar and that he'd inspired that for me.
I'm just thinking that your brain must have kicked in and decided it was Kylo Ren and you couldn't possibly
That's all I can think of. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Like my whole life, loved Star Wars. And that's actually why I wanted to meet him, because when I saw the last Star Wars movie, I was so distraught by the ending. I'm a romance writer. That's not how romances end, right? And I'm
right,
like,
yeah.
Was there an alternate ending? Did they film an alternate ending? And I wanted to ask him that. That's the whole reason I bid, was to ask him that. And I didn't even get to him. So it's okay though. I actually talked to Daisy Ridley, who plays Rey. I talked to her a month ago. Same thing. She did a charity auction and I won. And I'm like, okay, I have questions about Star Wars. And she's like, let's go. She was so cute. But
you have incredible luck with celebrity auctions. That's amazing.
Yeah, I enjoy it. It's kind of like a hobby for me. I told my husband, said, other women go buy shoes and handbags, take girls' weekends. I do this. So it's fun.
There you go. Yeah, it sounds really fun. Very cool. So yeah, now I'm sort of conflating Noah and Adam Driver. Interesting.
I'll tell you, for me, Noah is very much a distinct person. Like,
yeah,
there's little bits of Adam Driver. Like I said, I don't know the man. I don't know anything about him. So there's little bits of him, but it's just
right.
Perception that I see as a fan, But yeah, Noah very much feels like his own person to me.
Yeah. And then, so the main character in this book is Juliet, and she is obviously very different from Madison. But what do you think about her will resonate with readers?
I think the fact that she is an animal lover. She's got a mobile dog grooming unit, and she loves animals. She loves dogs. And I'm realizing I'm not a dog person. I've never had a dog growing up, not in my own home. Now with my kids, like how much people love their dogs. And I don't think I figured it out until I went to my publisher a few years ago. It's Montlake Publishing. They're with Amazon. I got to go to the Amazon building. Literally every person had a dog at their desk. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that, because Amazon has a very dog-friendly policy and people bring their dogs to work. They have a whole floor that's dedicated to dogs. Like you can take your dog down there and they can play with the other dogs and run around. There's like an outside. I saw the outside patio from my hotel and I thought it was like a helicopter landing something. No, it's for the dogs to run around on and be outside. But yeah, so I just thought people really, really, because I love my cats. I have 3 cats and I adore them. But I think there's like a special bond between people and dogs. And I really love when other people love dogs too. So yeah, I think her loving animals the way that she does, I think will really appeal to people. I think her kind of striking out on her own and wanting to be independent and start her own business and not kind of get stuck in a corporate rat race would probably be appealing. And I think her loyalty to her best friend, that she would do anything for Shelby, like literally lie for her, And so I think those will probably be the things that resonate with readers.
I agree. I'm glad you brought up Shelby, because I was going to say that's one of the things that I really appreciate about her was her relationship with Shelby. And there's, obviously a lot of layers there that we don't need to get into, but I enjoyed that relationship. And I'm also intrigued that you're not a dog person, because I have 2 of your books sitting here and they both have dogs in them.
Yeah. Like I said, I just am realizing people really love it. And I am surrounded by dog lovers. I don't dislike dogs. I've never had one. Right. And my husband and I were actually talking the other day, and I'm like, I wouldn't even know. Like, I would love to get a puppy, because I think puppies are adorable. I thought, I don't even know how to take care of them. And I probably sound so stupid, but I'm like, I know you're supposed to like teach them and crate them. And, I guess I could watch videos, but, I just, when you grow up with it, you probably just don't even realize, you know how to take care of a dog because you have your whole life.
Right.
So. But yeah, I just never have. And so it kind of almost seems scary to me, which probably sounds silly, but because my cats are so easy. We give them food and water and we clean up their poop from the litter box. That's it. Pretty easy. So I don't know, but we have talked about it. But yeah, I'm surrounded by people who just adore their dogs. And in fact, Pigeon from Roommade is named after my aunt's dog, Pigeon. So
that's actually who the book is dedicated to.
Yep. Aunt Pixie.
Yep, I just liked that it was Pixie and Pigeon. If you don't know the backstory, you're like, oh, Pixie and her pigeon. I'm curious.
We're going to go ahead and take our second break of the podcast, but oh my goodness, back to that story about Soraya meeting Adam Driver. I have never met a celebrity, really. No, ever, I don't think. I can't think of anybody, so I'm going to say I've never met a celebrity because you'd think I would remember, unless I passed out and I don't remember, because that would be a distinct possibility. I just think I would stand there and gape, maybe. Maybe I would have a normal conversation. I hope I would have a normal conversation, but I don't know. I think I would be kind of a dork, so probably it's good that I don't meet celebrities. But we're going to go ahead and take that second break. When we come back, we'll talk about how my husband tricked me into getting a dog. Stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I will be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
GSMC Book Review Podcast. Before the break, Soraya and I were talking about I was surprised that she's not really a dog person, given that there are dogs in both of these books. And then I said I would tell you how my husband tricked me into getting a dog. He didn't really trick me. I think I've probably told the story before on this podcast as to why I have dogs now. But let's go ahead and get back to the interview with Soraya.
I don't think that sounds silly about being scared about having a dog. I didn't grow up with pets. My mom is terribly allergic to dang near everything, and I didn't have a dog until 7 years ago when my husband, he didn't trick me into it, but I pretend he tricked me into getting puppies. And I wouldn't have had any idea what to do with them if it hadn't been for him. So I hear you. When you start a story, or you're thinking, you're doing, you're kind of getting your thoughts together for a book, do you like to do a lot of research, or what? How does that process work for you in terms of what kinds of research you tend to do for a book?
It really depends. Like I will say, like with the seat filler, I like you said, I was aware of seat fillers, but I didn't know what went into them, and it's actually a difficult subject to research because they sign these really extensive NDAs to not talk about what's happening. But there are people who have, which is how I have these stories and the rules. Those are all real rules that you have to follow as a seat filler. But I had to learn all that stuff and finding the information, like the position Juliet finds herself in, that's a real thing that happened to a real seat filler. And for her, she got stuck next to Robin Williams, and he thought it was the funniest thing in the world and kept kicking her with his foot the whole night, until she could get up and move. Can you imagine Robin Williams? She's doing that. You're drawing attention. Stop.
Yeah.
But see, sometimes the research will kind of guide the story, and obviously when I saw that, I'm like, oh, I'm doing that. That's going to happen. Because how great is that? And other times it's like, I need to know what this theater looks like, and so you just kind of stop writing for a second, look it up real fast, and then go back to the writing. I don't think I do tons of research before. I think I do, I would say, enough just to get a general feel and understanding of what I'm doing. I don't have to become an expert or anything, but I do a lot of research too while I'm writing. That, like I said, I'm taking into this location. What should this look like? And I'll look up things on, images or whatever. So, yeah, and I don't know. I haven't really put anybody in a profession where I had to learn a lot about it, or if I give them somebody, if they have a job I don't understand, I kind of just reference it lightly without really going into what they do, but that's not, I don't know. It's not always true. It's different for every book, and that's probably not a great answer, but you're just trying to find out what do I need for the story? What makes the story move forward without, I think sometimes people do research and you can tell they've done their research and you just get like inundated with stuff they learned, and that's cool, but it's like, it kind of will sometimes wreck the flow of the story for me. So yeah.
Yeah, I know a lot of people talk about how they do, just hours and hours of research, and like one detail will make it into the actual story or the actual book. So, you have to have enough information to be informed and to be able to write well enough that people aren't, that people recognize what you're talking about, but not so much that it's like a how-to manual.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Do you typically tend to put any types of autobiographical elements in your writing, or no?
I think I do. I think everyone does. Like, how can you not? How can you not take stuff from your life and put it into your characters? Do I think any of my heroines are me? No, like not at all. Like some of them are even like the total opposite of me. But just looking around, like with Juliet, her wearing pink Converse shoes, that's my daughter. My 13-year-old daughter loves to wear her pink Converse. So it's just a little trait from her that I put into this heroine. With Madison, like she loves Hello Kitty. I adore Hello Kitty. And I'm like, manufacturers, put Hello Kitty on stuff and I will buy it. I love it that much. So just taking these little things that I like, or, it's also paying attention to people around me and what they like. But I feel like when you do that kind of stuff, when you take things from your actual life that you know about, and I thought that's why you read so many romances where the heroine is a romance writer, because what could be easier for the author? Like, I know everything about this. I know this industry inside and out. So it's very easy to go that route and, make them be a writer too, because you know so much about it. But I almost feel like, how can you not get your own life stuff into these books? Like your own beliefs and your own perspectives and, the way that you look at the world, it's absolutely going to get in there. So
I would tend to agree. What draws you to writing romantic comedy and happily ever after stories?
I'll tell you, when I was in high school, I had a sister who died. She was special needs. She was a year and a half younger than me. And she had a seizure and she died. And my mother, of course, we were all distraught, but my mother especially, this is her little girl. And I remember just darkness and pain and tears, and it was so awful. And my mom is the one who was always a romance reader in our family. And she would read and watch movies and like just for hours on end. And I said, I remember asking her, why are you doing this? And she's like, because when I watch a musical for an hour and a half, I get to forget this happened, and for an hour and a half, my life is easier. And I thought, I want to do that for people. And I want to do something where life is so hard and everything is so difficult. And we have so many trials and stresses and hardships that I'm like, if I can give you something where for a few hours, your burden is lightened and world seems a little brighter and you feel a little happier, like, why wouldn't somebody want to do that? I think it's like the greatest thing in the world to be able to give someone entertainment that makes their lives easier. So it's why I do it. I love romantic comedies anyways, but I love the idea of let's just do something that's light and fluffy and fun. And we're not going to be examining the human condition or talking about all this angst and drama. We're just going to have two people fall in love, and so how it's going to end, which is very comforting when you're reading this kind of stuff. So I'm just trying to take people in a place where your life's a little bit better, and that's why I'm drawn to it.
I agree. I like reading something that I know will have a happy ending. Sometimes you just need that, especially the way the world has been. And I'm terribly sorry for your family's loss, but I love that you've taken that experience and I think it's a testament to your sister and your mom and your family that you've done that with your writing.
Thank you.
So are you working on something new now? The Seat Filler comes out in April, so I'm sure you're working on all of that fun stuff pre-book release, but are you working on a new book right now?
I actually just finished one up. It's called The Paid Bridesmaid. and it will come out in December with the same publisher. It's about a woman who is hired to be a professional bridesmaid for weddings. And so she has to sign these NDAs and keep it secret. And she runs across the best man at the wedding who has a company that's about to go public, and he's worried about corporate spies. So this woman shows up that he's never heard of, who's saying she's the bride's best friend. He's a little suspicious. And so it's kind of the back and forth and the bantering and, them trying to find out each other's secrets, during this destination wedding in Hawaii. So I'm really excited about that one. I think it'll be a lot of fun. It was another light, fluffy romance away from, the hardships of real life.
Right, outside of COVID. Now I'm going to assume from what you have told me already that this is something that actually either happens or has happened, a professional bridesmaid. Did you find a story like that?
I read a story online of someone who did it for their job, and I'm like, that is awesome. Wow. Because, what a great way to get someone into a wedding where they know no one and don't know what's happening, but have to pretend like they do and pretend like there's a relationship with the bride. And I'm like, that can't be easy to keep that up for, maybe if it's one night, but I'm like, what if you're involved in the engagement party and, you have to keep this charade up for months. Like that can't be easy. So I thought that was interesting because I'm not like a party person. I don't like going to stuff. Very much an introvert and stay-at-home person. So I thought, here's just a completely different character where she loves going out and being in this environment. She loves going to this stuff. And so that was fun to write, too, writing someone who was so different than me.
Yeah, I bet. Your brain is a fun place, I will just say. You have a lot of interesting stories in your brain. I like it. When did you start writing? Is it something that you always wanted to do, or is it something that you came to later in life? How did that work for you?
Very much something I came to later. I did not grow up thinking, I'm going to be a writer. I always loved reading. I knew I could write well. I mean, I got really good grades on writing in school, and I think I kind of thought about it, like, wouldn't it be fun if I could be an author? But it just seems so unrealistic and so unattainable. And kind of what ended up happening was my oldest son was diagnosed with autism when he was 3 years old, and they have something called applied behavioral analysis for these kids, where it's a behavioral modification program. And back then, this is pre GoFundMe or anything like that at all, but it was like $10,000. And I mean, we were a young couple. I was pregnant with our second child. Like, it might as well have been 10 million. It just was so out of reach for us. And kind of just thinking about it, what do I do? How do I get this money? And this thought came to me, write a book. And I'm like, well, that's stupid. Like, I'm not going to do that. And one of the things we did was families from our church donated items so we could do like a multifamily garage sale. And I sent out press releases to local papers hoping they would cover it so we get more people out there. And a reporter came to the house, and on the doorstep, I opened the door, and she goes, okay, I just have to ask you this. Are you a writer? And I'm like, why? That's so random. Why would you ask me that? And she said, well, your press release was just so well written. I assumed you were a writer. And I'm like, okay, I got the message, I'll write the book. And I started off writing some historical fiction, and it was for this small, tiny publisher out here in Utah. And it was very disappointing as a process, and kind of sucked all my joy out of it. And then I had 2 more kids, and that was all my time. And I thought, New York is so hard to break into, and how do you do it? And, you have to write this high concept novel that everybody wants. And that's kind of when indie publishing started happening, and I got really excited about that. And I put up my own book, and then Amazon sponsored a contest, and because I thought, who you need to be in business with is Amazon, right? Like, who else is going to publicize your books better than Amazon? They're the biggest bookseller in the country. And they had a contest for people to enter a novel. And it's kind of like American Idol, but for books, where you put up like your cover and like the first chapter, and people could vote for you, for Amazon to look at you, to give you a book contract. And I
remember
won.
that, yeah.
Kindle Scout. I was one of the first 10 winners of Kindle Scout. And the woman who ran the program called me up, and she's like, well, why did you do this? Why did you enter? I said, well, I would love to be with Montlake, the romance line. But you had to have an agent. I didn't have an agent. I didn't really have any experience going for me. And she's like, okay. And so then she has the woman that I now know is the editorial director of Montlake call me. So I thought this was just like a foot in the door, networking, get the chance to meet you. And in the conversation, she goes, well, I'm going to offer you a 2-book contract. And I remember my mouth literally hanging open. And she's like, are you there? And I'm like, yeah. Like, I was in shock, just total shock. But she did. And that's kind of how I got my foot in the door there and started publishing with them. And it's been like a dream. Like, I want to work for them forever. Like, they're amazing. But, one of my editors there led me to my agent and, kind of growing some different directions now and finding some different, markets to kind of enter. But yeah, just doing some fun stuff going forward. But that's my whole publishing story. Sorry for that. You want to
no, I love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
that's one that I haven't heard before. So I love that journey that you were on.
One final break for this podcast. When we come back, we will be talking a little bit about the cover art for Roommaid and the Seat Filler. So stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I will be right back.
Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. Together we dive into the world of sci-fi and science fiction. From episodes of Star Trek, Star Wars, to The Walking Dead, Resident Evil, all the hot new science fiction movies from the backdoors of Marvel or DC. The Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. You'll never look at science fiction the same way again.
GSMC Book Review Podcast and the conclusion of my interview with author Sariah Wilson. We have talked about her books, Roommaid and The Seat Filler. Both books have really fun cover art, I think. In my opinion, it's very cool and very similar. So we are going to talk a little bit more about that cover art.
When it comes to the books, the covers are very similar. I mean, you can tell that they're by the same author. Do you have much input into the cover art, or how does that work?
It's worked very differently as time has gone on. My husband and I were actually literally talking about this last night because I'm on like the third round of approvals for the Paid Bridesmaid cover, and I think we've settled on it and found it, so I'm very excited. But he said, remember in the beginning when you started out, they sent you a cover and like, this is your cover, and you're like, okay, thank you. And that's how it was. Like, they would send me a cover, like, this is your cover. And then I got a new editor a few years into it, and she sent me 2 covers, and I said, you know what, I don't really like either one, so you pick whichever one you like. And then she got me 2 more covers. And this was like unheard of for me. Like, it was just this new ground. And now, I mean, like when we did the seat filler, I mean, there were like 6 or 7 different concepts for the seat filler. Roommate was the same way. Like, they just give me all these concepts. Same with the Paid Bridesmaid, multiple concepts. So it's kind of narrowing it down and what do you like best from each one. So it really does feel like they take my input very seriously, and I can say, this is what I like, this color scheme, I liked these figures over here, but telling them what I like, but it's also what my editor likes and what my agent likes. And then what's really important is what marketing likes, for the publisher. So I think if I said, well, I like this, and marketing said too bad, the answer would be too bad, but I very much feel valued. And I know that's not true for a lot of authors in their publishing houses, but I am very much treated like your opinion matters, and, tell us what you like best and let's work from there. So they've been wonderful.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. From your own experience in the publishing world, the writing world, do you have advice for aspiring authors?
Yeah, the thing that I would say is read. Like, it surprises me how many people say they want to be writers, but they don't read. Like, how can you want to write if you don't love reading? Like, you have to love it first. So I think what's important is finding your voice. Like I said, I started off writing historical fiction, and I think I can do it, and I can do it fine, but I don't know that that's my strong point. I don't know that's where my voice is its best. And I feel like contemporary romantic comedies is where I get to shine. And that's it, so many different things of what I like or about writing, it just fits really well into that. So I would say find out where you think, get opinions, write some different stuff. And I've seen people who try to write one genre for years and then all of a sudden break through when they switch genres. Try something different if it's not working for you. But find out what you love. And like one of the things I love is I love YA fantasy. I'm not sure I'll ever write it, but oh my gosh, I love it. So kind of figure out what's the things that you love and should write as opposed to, but I would say that, and I would say joining a professional organization is really, really beneficial when you're starting out. For romance writers, you can join Romance Writers of America, local chapters, online chapters. I feel like there's just so much help and mentorship and questions answered there, and being able to find other people who are starting out like you, and you guys can give each other feedback and what you do and don't like. I don't know. I feel like joining professional groups helps a lot, and going to their conferences and learning from people who've already done it, I think are really, really helpful when you're starting out.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate it. You mentioned, loving to read, and I agree. I'm also a person who loves to read. You mentioned young adult books. What other types of genres or authors are your go-to books when you read for yourself?
I will read just about anything other than romantic suspense and westerns. Like those just don't do them for me. But I read, national suspense thrillers. I love fantasy. I love dystopian stuff. I love all kinds of romance. Like I said, I'll read almost any kind of genre in romance. But yeah, I think YA fantasy has kind of been my big thing lately. I've been reading that a lot. For me, it's a fun subversion of taking this fantasy trope, this Lord of the Rings thing, but then letting teenagers do it and having it be different. So I enjoy that. But I love everything, and people are always like, who are your favorite authors? One of my favorite authors is Maeve Binchy. She's an Irish author. Who's like the total opposite of how I write. Like her stuff is so sad. Like I'm always happy when there's a happy ending because it's so rare in her writing. And she passed away a few years ago, which was just so sad. But I thought, for me, I'm never going to get another new book from her. Like that just made me like my heart break, because I love her writing, just the economy of it and the power and emotion in it. But she's so different than me, But I find her work very, very inspiring. I love Amy Tan, Sophie Kinsella, Christina Lauren's really fun. Terry Brooks wrote the Shannara series. That was my introduction to fantasy, so I love his stuff. I still read him. But yeah, trying to pick favorite authors though, by and large, that's like favorite children, like there's so many. You don't want to pick one, and I don't know. I have a lot of different authors I love in different genres. But we would be here all day. So there's a lot.
Exactly. And, and I asked the question, but I can't answer the question because it depends on my mood and, what I'm feeling is depending for what authors I will go to. You said Terry Brooks, and we could spend the next 4 hours talking about that series. And, I've been reading it since high school, and it just supposedly wrapped up. And anyway, I have thoughts, but I will not inundate you with my thoughts. Where can people... You would be the listeners might be asleep. Websites, where can people find you on the internet? So website, social media, all that good stuff.
My website is SariahWilson.com. I've got a newsletter from there. I'm so bad at sending out newsletters. My publicist is constantly writing me about it, but so I won't spam you. If I get out once a month, I'm very happy. Twitter, I'm Sariah Wilson. Instagram is Sariah Wilson 411. Facebook is Sariah S. Wilson, I think. Sariah Wilson author. I don't know. Look up Sariah Wilson. I have a very unique name. It's not hard to find me. I'm everywhere. But yeah, come find me and talk to me about stuff. I love interacting with readers. I actually have a readers group on Facebook that I show them covers first and have them help me pick out names, and it's really fun.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Well, we have talked about a variety of different things today, but is there anything that we haven't covered in terms of either of the books or writing that you want to mention?
I don't think so. I think we covered it pretty well.
All right. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, not only about Seat Filler, but also about Roommade. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you once again to Sariah for joining me to talk not only about one romantic comedy, but two. Again, the books are Roommade, it's one word, Roommaid, Roommade, and The Seat Filler. I love romantic comedy. I've said that before. It's probably my favorite genre, or definitely up there in my top favorite genres. I just love to be able to sink into a story, know that it's probably going to have a happy ending, know that there's going to be some rough patches, that those rough patches will probably be in some ways funny, in other ways, true to life. Sometimes they're a little over the top. It's just, there's so many good things to say about romantic comedies, in my opinion, and these two are great. They're so much fun, and they have great main characters, and both of them have dogs. So if you are a fan of dogs, let me ask this. I should know this. I'm the host of the podcast, right? But I've never looked this up, and I've never talked to anybody about this. You know how there are cozy mysteries, and they tend to have a pet or something, along those lines? Is there, cozy romances also? Romances that involve dogs or cats or some other pet or trope like that? I don't know. If there are cozy mysteries, I feel like there should be cozy romances. Please don't yell at me if I just made the stupidest comment ever, but feel free to hit me up on social media. That's always great. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, GSMC Book Review. You can find me there and interact with me on any of those social media platforms, and I would love if you would do so, but please don't yell at me. Anyway, Roommade, The Seat Filler, great books. If you're a fan of romantic comedies, you should definitely check them out. They are such a nice way to just escape from whatever's going on in your world right now and immerse yourself in the worlds of the two couples in these books. Thank you again to Soraya. Thank you, as always, to you, my listeners. I hope that you will join me again for the next episode when I have another returning author. Stephanie Kane will be joining me again to talk about the next book in her art mystery series. If you remember her, if you tuned into that first episode where she joined me, then you may remember that she is a big fan of art, and her books always have a large art component within them, along with the gruesome murder, of course. So art and murder, it's all fun. You should definitely join me when I speak once again with Stephanie Kane. In the meantime, I hope that you are having a wonderful day, and maybe that day will inspire you to give us a nice review. We would love if you could write a review or give us a 5-star review. That would be very, very helpful in order to get this podcast out to other book lovers such as yourselves. But whatever your day entails, if that day involves sunshine or writing reviews or hitting me up on social media, I hope it also involves plenty of time to get yourself lost in a good book. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Book Review Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.